It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you riding with us. If you're visiting us on our website, that's great news. I see a ton of you out there. Boy, I love it when I see on Google Analytics, I have the ability to look into our website and see how many folks are actually watching or on the site at any given moment. I can't tell who you are, so there's no NSA trickery going on here. But I can see that how many of you are on there and basically what city you're in. So I see Spokane, I see Lincoln, Nebraska, let's see, Town and Country, I don't even know what that is. West Plains, of course, Huntington, I see Salon, I think that's Michigan or something, Elkton, I think that's Maine. So in any event, there's a bunch of others. The point is, we can see that you're actually on and live and streaming our show, and we appreciate you doing that. Whether you're listening on audio only or you're watching on video, we're glad to have you. Thank you very much for joining with us. If you're catching us on Patriot FB, that's awesome news. That means that site is developing and building a great rapport for patriots. If you haven't yet joined to Patriot FB, I would strongly encourage you to do so. You can catch our show live, at least on the audio version, there every morning. And so, and of course, you can always listen to us on Big Country 99. That's 99.3 FM on your FM dial, and that is in Central Missouri. You can find us there at midnight to 2 a.m., and you'll hear promos running all day long there for us as well. We appreciate the folks over at Big Country 99. They are true and strong patriots, and we're very grateful and appreciative. That's a great radio station. They play country and kind of contemporary rock and country music by day. And then at night, they take off their bill caps and they take off their cowboy hats and they put on these tri-corner patriot hats. I absolutely love that. I mean, how many stations are willing to do that? They're a local group. They promote America's Voice Now. By the way, if you're an advertiser and you'd like to advertise with us on that radio station, I have got some absolutely stunning advertising packages that will blow you away. The pricing is so low on there, I can't even talk to you about it over the air. But if you are a business, if you own a small business, a large business, national, regional in this area, whatever, please make sure that you contact me as soon as possible. You can do that by emailing me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. Simply put the word advertising in the subject line, and I'll know what it's about. For the record, our new listen line is available to you, and that means if you are, this is a service provided to us by Audio Now. If you are either outside of our broadcast area or anytime you want to listen, the show runs live from 8 to 10, and then 24 hours a day it just repeats. You can call in on a mobile phone, utilize your unlimited mobile minutes, and it won't utilize any of your data services. So it's free to you, it's free to us, and we're grateful to the folks over at Audio Now. You can call that number. It's 415-325-0725. That's 415-325-0725. Now, if you're driving in your car and you want to listen to AVN, whether it's live or whether it's recorded, that's a perfect opportunity. You can call in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Landline, mobile phone, makes no difference. What a great service provided to us by Audio Now. And I'm so grateful to those folks for doing that for us. Also, if you'd like to call into the show today, one of the things I'm going to talk about in our fourth segment, and I would strongly encourage anybody who's got input or ideas and wants to chat about this, you're welcome to call the show live. Our hotline phone number for you to call is 417-204-5141. That's 417-204-5141. Now, of course, that's only if the show is live, obviously. If you're listening to it recorded, you're not going to be able to call. But I would encourage you to do so, 417-204-5141, and that line will ring in right here at the board. So, let's talk about the 4 topics that we're going to hit this morning because they're important ones. 1, NSA and states' rights in conflict under the 10th Amendment. There is a push and a move afoot for states to, and the 10th Amendment Center is one of the groups that is sponsoring and promoting this concept. I encourage you to communicate with the 10th Amendment Center for your state. They help write legislation, so in most cases, all you've got to do is download that legislation, change your state's parameters, obviously, and then get it to the legislators in your state to be able to take a look at it. So NSA and states' rights are in conflict under the 10th Amendment. And also, California has got a move afoot to actually shut off the utility power to the massive hard drive that was recently built in Utah. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. The CoIntel exposure team that exposed the CoIntel abuses that were going on originally back in the 70s have come forward, and they have essentially exposed themselves because they wanted to work with the idea of Snowden. They basically come out and applauded what Snowden has done. And these are the activists who actually broke into the FBI system and exposed CoIntelpro. Now, if you don't know what CoIntelpro was, you'll have to listen for that segment. Our third segment, Fort Pierce gets an MRAP. Another city law enforcement agency that gets an MRAP, which is a up-armored military vehicle. They got this thing for a song, folks. These are $700,000 vehicles, and it was given to them by the Department of Homeland Security for $2,000. You know what the chief of police says over there? If you see my SWAT team roll up in this, it's over. So just give up. Wow. What a blatantly abusive statement. Forgive me for saying so, but if I'm not mistaken, isn't the job of law enforcement to protect and serve? They were peace officers a dozen years ago. How did they become law enforcement? How arrogant, how self-aggrandizing, and how abusive of the people who this idiot is sworn to protect and serve. Okay, we're going to talk about it in a minute. And then our final segment, and I got to tell you, this is an important one. And if you have an interest in calling into the show to discuss it, I'd love to hear your ideas about it. This is called The PACT. Now, this is a program which I sat down and put together after looking at why we constantly are being betrayed by our own elected representatives. And here's the problem. These representatives, over and over and over, promise one thing, get into office, and do something completely different. We have all of these people talking about, well, we need a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget, for term limits, for this, for that, to make sure that these people follow the Constitution, that they read the bills. Great. I got a perfect solution for that. It's called the PACT. I'm going to give you the brief lowdown on it. Here's what essentially it says. And I'm going to explain it in detail when we get to this fourth segment. Here's what the PACT is. And I'd like your input on this, and then I'd like you to help me spread the concept, because it's effective right now, and it can be utilized this election season coming up in 2014. First and foremost, it appoints 11 accountability partners to anyone who wants to run as a candidate, which is ideal for people running against these entrenched incumbents. Because what the PACT says is, I've got a contract that's signed here. And the contract states emphatically that I will do a number of things. One, I will only vote on bills that I've read. I will honor term limits. I'm agreeing to a term limit of 1 term for senator and 2 terms for a House of Representatives member. Or this works for city council. It works for mayor. It works for county commissioner. It works for state representative. It works for state governor. It works for anybody. The terms can be modified to fit that requirement. And essentially there are a group of constitutional committed terms in there. But here's where it gets important, because we've all seen contracts with the constituency, right? Contract with America, the American contract, and all that. Well, the PACT is different, and here's why. Your 11 accountability partners enter into this agreement, and they can't be your friends and relatives and your co-workers and your business partners and stuff like that. They have to be independent. They cannot be party members of the Republican or Democratic Party either. And here's what happens. You, as a candidate, sign a pre-execute a resignation letter. And if at any point in time you violate the terms of your contract, essentially all they've got to do is date it and submit it to the press and notify you that you've got 48 hours to figure out how you're going to answer to the press for resigning. Ladies and gentlemen, the concept is to put teeth into our ability to hold these people accountable. And the way to hold them accountable is to do so by a contract, and a contract that they willingly sign. I'll explain it in greater detail. I'd like your opinions and ideas. I think, let me get into this first story because we're going to run out of time if we don't. So here's the deal. The NSA and states' rights are in conflict. The states right now are basically pushing back against the NSA for the spying on what they're doing to the state citizenry. And, the original concept of our founders was that we had a government that was designed where the federal government had its purview of expressly granted permissions to function in areas that affected the entire country of all, at that time, 13, but today, 50 states. So they were required to handle things like border security, because border security wasn't limited to just Texas and Arizona, or just Spokane, or just Washington State, or just Maine, or just Michigan, or just, it affected all the states combined. And so the federal government was given and delegated the duty to make immigration and border patrol policies that would protect the nation from invasion, and the states individually. Secondarily, they were to protect the states in the event of an invasion. And I can tell you right now, it's an arguable point, but I'd be more than happy to put my 2 cents into it. What we're seeing now with the massive illegal immigrants pouring across our border is certainly an invasion. It may not be an armed one, but it's an invasion nonetheless. The federal government was also given a number of other duties and powers. But the states withheld all other rights and powers under the 10th Amendment to themselves. Now, they also have an obligation and a duty to protect the citizens of those states from a government that's operating in a tyrannical fashion and has descended into despotism. And that's where we are today. We have a government that is completely, for all intents and purposes, abdicated any level of responsibility that it has to the nation and has become tyrannical in its very nature. So there is a move afoot and a number of different processes. California legislators have introduced a bill to banish the NSA. Here's what they want to do. They want to actually cut the utilities to the NSA's massive hard drive placed out in Utah, and there's others around the country, I might add. And they want to ban research at state schools, and they want to impose sanctions on contractors who would work and provide material support to the National Security Agency. Hoorah! You see, and this is a bipartisan effort in the California state legislature. They want to prohibit the state and its localities from providing material support to the National Security Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, it sounds to me like they are declaring the National Security Agency to be an enemy of the people. And I would agree. And you would too, most likely. If the bill becomes law, it would deny the NSA facilities access to water and electricity from all public utilities. It would impose sanctions on the companies that try to fill the resulting void. In other words, if a commercial business says, hey, if the city's not going to supply water, we'll figure out a way to do it and sell them water, and we'll make a bundle. Well, it would impose sanctions on those companies, and it would outlaw NSA research partnerships with state universities, including UCLA and others. So here's the idea. And by the way, I got to applaud this. I think every state should have this, and Utah specifically should be passing this. Here's the problem. The states have abdicated their control and their own sovereignty to the federal government because they've been plied with money, bribed, and now they've become addicted to it like a heroin addict is addicted to that needle stuck in his arm. And so they have capitulated time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. Basically, anytime the federal government says jump, the states say, how high and in which direction would you like us to go? Sir. And the federal government backs that up by threatening to withdraw money that they've stolen from the states and the citizenry in those states in the first place. What kind of a twisted, tangled web is that? So the real problem here is that the states need to restore their position as a co-equal and, frankly, supervisory government over the national government. Excuse me. I need some coffee. You know, I didn't get this voice by not smoking. For those of you who don't know, I am a smoker, and I have been for all of my life, or most of it. And from time to time, there's a negative side to that, and it makes you cough. Okay. I don't even want to hear all your diatribe about how I got to quit. Forget it. That's not my concern, and you're not going to convince me to do one thing or another. I'll quit when I'm ready and not until. Okay, so here's the deal. The 10th Amendment Center and lawmakers right here in Missouri are proposing to amend our state constitution so that it would add in the state constitution of Missouri the phrase, "and electronic communications and data," end quote, right? So the quote would be, it would add the following phrase, "and electronic communications and data." And that would add that provision to a constitutional statement in our state constitution that provides privacy and security for residents. So it would incorporate your personal tracking device and your family tracking device and your computer tracking device to that list, essentially telling the NSA, here in Missouri, you ain't welcome. Now, the change would read incomplete, that the people shall be secure in their persons, papers, homes, and effects, and electronic communications and data from unreasonable searches and seizures, and no warrant to search any place or seize any person or thing or access electronic data or communication shall issue without describing the place to be searched or the person or thing to be seized or the data or communication to be accessed as nearly as may be, nor without probable cause supported by written oath or affirmation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a constitutional amendment or a modification to an existing one that every of the 50 states can get behind. Here's the problem. We need our states to interpose themselves. Now, interposition is normally a phrase attributed and connected to nullification and the principles thereof. And we can have a discussion about nullification and how that works. I'd be more than happy to do that with you, but today's not the day for that. That's a whole topic of another show. But interposition sounds exactly like what it means. You are stepping in between. You're breaking up the interchange, the connection. So let's draw an analogy so that everybody gets the concept of interposition. You're standing there, and you're watching a guy or an older kid bully a little boy. And he's bullying him, and he's trying to take his lunch money, and he's tossing his books around, and he's abusing him. And you step up, and you grab the kid by the scruff of the neck, and you back him off, and you say, "Stop. If you're going to mess around with him and injure him and bully him, you're going to have to go through me." Ladies and gentlemen, that is the principle of interposition. That is a duty and an obligation of our states. They must interpose themselves and provide a level of security and protection for us as the members of that state. I encourage you to go to the 10th Amendment Center and educate yourself about who and what they are and what they offer. This is an outstanding organization, and it's spelled out just like it sounds, 10th, T-E-N-T-H, amendmentcenter.com. 10thamendmentcenter.com. Now, they have pre-written legislation right up on their website. I've had these guys on our show. I've interviewed them. I applaud what they do. We've worked with some of the issues from their website. I've helped write some of the legislation that has actually been there. Look, here's the deal. The idea is that the states can be forced to interpose themselves if only we, the people, force the states to do that. And we must, because clearly the federal government's not going to give up power. So the only thing that the states can do is take it back. And that has to be a movement that's done as a wave. Now, it's going to be a wave just like you would see in a ballpark, where it starts on one side and kind of ripples its way through the crowd. It's not going to all happen in one day. 50 states aren't going to all pass the same stuff. But you have an obligation as a leader to start doing it in your state. Okay. Before we break, and we've got a break coming up in 2 minutes, I want to make sure that I thank the Battery Station for their support of our program. You can find them at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. You can call them at 417-257-7799, and you can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Outstanding organization, great group, true patriots. Our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains, the only Pizza Hut that will step up and independently support a program like this. They have a great lunch special. You can make sure that you take advantage of it. They've got a salad bar, and then they've got a pasta bar, including pizza and all that kind of thing. And that's every day for lunch. And then on Tuesdays, it's Kids Eat Free on family night. Make sure that you see our friend Jason Henry. He's a lawyer. Most lawyers I don't like, but this guy I do. His name is Jason Henry. He's over at number 10 Court Square in West Plains. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. And he specializes in federal gun cases, among others, and federal law. He also works with state criminal cases and things like that. So if you've got a case or you've got someone else who's got a case, make sure you give him a call. Jason Henry, 417-256-4100. Our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. You can reach them at 417-257-1776. They are located right on the square in West Plains. They sell cigars and tobacco and every accessory you could possibly imagine for that particular endeavor. I do occasionally go in there. I'm not a pipe and tobacco or cigar smoker, but I go in and I hang out there and every once in a while meet with some fellas and we have a nice conversation. Directly in front of that is the Wits End Classic Barbershop, and I would strongly ask you to go in there, treat yourself, treat your significant other, your husband, whatever, to a great shave and a haircut. It's still $10 to get a haircut there. They also do it with the hot lather and the towel and the straight razor and the whole 9 yards if you want that kind of a shave. You'll be very, very pleased with your results. I'll be going over there today to get a haircut right after I get off the radio with you. So, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the CoIntel team that exposed the original project that was, for all intents and purposes, one of the most, at the time, it was one of the worst exposures of government overreach that was ever brought forth. These folks did this in 1971. They've come forward and they are exposing themselves, but they're also applauding what Edward Snowden has done. In fact, they're giving him a hearty hello and well met. Outstanding. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice right now. You can email me by hitting mike@americasvoicenow.org into your email. You can also call us live on our telephone line at 417-204-5141. We'll be right back. All right. You're back. We're back. Hey, listen, if you'd like to advertise with America's Voice Now, I would strongly ask that you send me a quick email. You can put in the subject line, you just put advertising. I'll know what that means. And we have an outstanding package that we can offer you on our website, on our video streaming, on our audio streaming, and also on Big Country 99, where we broadcast every night, and terrestrial radio. And so I'd love to talk to you, whether you are a regional company that would benefit from just radio, or whether you would benefit from radio and all of our other methods and outlets to stream our message to our listeners. We want you because, to be honest with you, folks, I can't keep supporting this thing out of my pocket. So help us out and help yourself out by supporting us by advertising with us. All you got to do is send me a quick email, mike@americasvoicenow.org, and put in the subject line, advertising. And I'd love to chat with you. I've got a couple of great programs that will seriously benefit you. If you'd like to call into our show, you can do so. Our telephone number for live contact is 417-204-5141. That's 417-204-5141. I do take calls on the air. We recently moved into our new studio at Victory Church in West Plains. Thank you, folks at Victory Church. What an outstanding group. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, reminds me to tell you that not all 501c3 and churches are alike. This is a church that actually believes in their patriotic duty to educate their own members and their own flock. And the pastor out here, Pastor Brendan Ayers, he is an absolute patriot, and I really love this guy. He's just a true American patriotic spirit. He really is, and he's a man of God. So thank you, Victory Church, for allowing us to broadcast here and providing us with the facility to have the station in here. Since we moved the station in here, we now have our phone lines connected in here, and again, you can call into the show. So it's 417-204-5141. That's 417-204-5141. All right. Our segment here is on CoIntelpro, excuse me. Now, CoIntelpro was an original abuse by the FBI. And essentially, if you're not familiar with it, it would be a long story for me to kind of go over the whole thing. But essentially, CoIntelpro was doing some terrible, terrible things. And there was a group of 8 people that were as an anti-war group that they broke into the FBI satellite office in Media, Pennsylvania, back in 1971. And basically, even though J. Edgar Hoover put 200 agents on the case, they never figured out who did this. And by breaking into the FBI's satellite office, it wasn't their HQ, it was a branch office. By breaking in, they captured the information that enabled them to expose the CoIntel program, which was canceled after it was exposed. In other words, the American public went bonkers when they found out what this was. Now, 5 of the 8 members who were part of that original team have come forward and identified themselves in a brand new book. There's an article in the Daily Mail UK that exposes it, and basically they have come forth and stated, hey, we were the folks that did the CoIntelpro exposure. And they've done so for a number of reasons. I guess they feel like they are safe at this point. They're elderly. And secondarily, the CoIntelpro scandal was, nobody even tried to defend it like they're trying to defend what the NSA is doing right now. And one of Mr. Raines, who's a retired professor of religion at Temple University, he basically came out and here's what he said. He said, we did it because somebody had to do it. Now, he's 80 years old, John Raines, and he and his wife, Bonnie, were part of the group. They were an anti-Vietnam War protester group, and they stole over 1,000 documents, and then they revealed the details of this spying operation, which was CoIntelpro. So the point is that one of the reasons that they're doing this is they're coming out and they're exposing themselves because they want to make it clear that what's happening here with our current NSA stuff is very similar in its origins and it's very similar in its end results, so that every American should be looking at this and saying, hey, what happened in CoIntelpro is happening now, but on a mammoth scale. The scale today of the NSA's surveillance programs makes CoIntelpro look like a flea on the elephant's hiney. So anyway, in this case, he says, in this case, by breaking a law, entering and removing files, We exposed a crime that was going on. When we are denied the information we need to have to act as citizens, then we have a right to do what we did. His wife added in this interview, she says, I was horrified that our government was lying to us about what was actually happening in Vietnam. And all the usual things we always did, picketing and marching and signing petitions, didn't make any difference whatsoever. Now, during this interview, and it's on video, of course, they actually said from one whistleblower to another, meaning Edward Snowden, hi. And I got to tell you, I think that it's outstanding that these people have come forward. I'm sure there's a certain level of significant risk for them in the sense that they've kind of exposed themselves now. But at the same point in time, they're 80 years old. I'm sure their attitude is, hey, listen, we've lived our lives. We've lived this secret for the last 40 some odd years, 42 years. And at this point, what are they really going to do to us, And honestly, I wish more Americans, and I wish more folks in the military, and I wish more folks who had inside knowledge, who are, who are willing to step forward and say, you know what, I'm going to put my life and my career and my future and my retirement at risk. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be a constitutional patriot. Not a traitor. Not even a whistleblower. I'm just going to do the right thing. I'm going to expose what I know. I know I've signed non-disclosure agreements. I know I've got all of these requirements on me. I know I've been warned that if I come forward as a military representative and I state I'm violating, my security clearances and all that. But I got to tell you, I think we've reached a point in our nation where your obligation to protect and defend the country and the Constitution from the very likes of the people who you have committed to be silent from is arrived. In other words, I now believe, and I don't want to, I'm not giving and I don't want anyone to have the impression that I'm advocating here that these people step forward and endanger American lives. I'm not talking about, coming out and saying, hey, here's a list of all the guys that are undercover in Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran or wherever. I am saying that there are a lot of people out there in this country who have inside knowledge about what the National Security Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and all of these groups are doing that is antithetical to freedom, liberty, and the principles of constitutional law. The Constitution is our guidebook, but it gives some very, very clear boundaries. And I don't think anybody who's intellectually honest can stand there and say, we're not way over those boundaries. I mean, the idea, the analogy and the mental picture that jumps to mind is, a 500-pound guy who's trying to sit on a 2x4. We're nowhere within those boundaries anymore. We're oozing over the sides. I didn't mean a 2x4 this way. I meant a 2x4 this way. There's a mental picture for you. 500-pound guy with a 2x4 sitting on it, oozing over the sides. But that's the abuse that our Constitution is experiencing today. And it's not just the piece of paper, folks. That Constitution is representative of us. So anyway, the point is this. These folks have come out and they've done what other true Americans who are the equivalent of our founders can and should be doing. I hear people say to me all the time, who's a George Washington? Who's a Madison? Who's a Jefferson among us? Who's Thomas Paine today? I got to tell you, I believe there are many, many Washingtons and Jeffersons. I believe there are many Madisons. They don't have a voice because they don't have the exposure to media. But let's understand something. The people who were the founders of our nation originally, some of them were on the inside know of what was going on and coming at the nation from the tyrant-in-chief at that time, which was King George. I mean, these guys were, the founders were individuals who were already politically involved and connected. They were commercially connected. They knew they were in commerce. They were owners of businesses and huge tracts of land. They knew and understood that they were risking everything by stepping up and doing what ultimately was the right thing to do. So I've got to ask, where are our patriots today who will step up and expose what's going on? Where are the folks in the military? Now look, I get it. You know, when you're in the upper executive echelons of the military, you are never out of the military. It's not like a guy who goes into the military and he's there for 4 or 5 years and he goes in a private, he leaves a sergeant, or he goes in a private, he leaves a corporal. When you're a flag level officer, you're always an officer, even when you retire. And it's very clear that you're under the same restrictions and limitations when you are retired that you were under when you were active. They make it very and abundantly clear to you that any exposure of the top secret knowledge and information that you have and had as a result of your military service is expected to be held in the same trust under retirement as it would have under active duty. But I got to tell you, folks, when that commitment to silence, when the commitment to honoring your agreement to remain silent is endangering the nation itself, then your constitutional duty supersedes, overrides, and replaces any agreement that you made with men. The reason I say that is because you didn't swear an oath to protect despotism. You didn't swear an oath to protect men in power. You didn't swear an oath to abandon the people of the nation to tyranny and despotism. You swore an oath to defend and protect the Constitution. And when they are violating that self-same Constitution, then you have a duty and an obligation to take corrective action. This group comes out in their book and they say, they provide the details on how they did it and how they managed to stay anonymous, even though, J. Edgar Hoover had put hundreds and hundreds of agents out there to investigate and find out who they were. This whole thing was organized by a Haverford College physics professor. His name is Bill David, and he's since passed away, of course. And instead of trying to break into the FBI's main office, they targeted this branch office because they figured it would be far less guarded and it would be a little easier to gain access to. And they broke in the night that Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier, which, if you were alive at that time, pretty much the entire nation was watching that on television. It was almost like the moon landing, right? I remember the fight. So in any event, they cased the building before they went in, and they they made sure that they were of what they were going to face when they got in there. And Bonnie Raines dressed as a college student so that she could go in and get the layout of the office, and she went in and cased the place. She says, I tried to disguise my appearance as much as I could. I had long, dark, hippie hair at that time, and I stuffed it up inside of a winter hat. She basically gained access by pretending to interview an FBI official about job prospects for women in the school paper. And she made sure that while she was in there, she didn't take off her gloves because she didn't want to leave fingerprints anywhere in the building, which is, pretty thoughtful. Of course, today, you've got facial recognition that would capture you 99 ways from Sunday before you even got past the foyer of the building, right? But I got to tell you, it doesn't take this kind of civilian. Look, here's my point. If these people in the military who are in the know about what's really going on in our country were to take action and do the right thing, you wouldn't have to have a group of civilians like this who would be willing to go to these lengths. Why is it that civilians who are just deeply concerned patriots have to take action because the people who are in the know and in our government and disagree with what's going on won't come forward and put the risk forth themselves? So instead, you got to get a bunch of civilians who, for all intents and purposes, are just a bunch of college kids to go out and do what you're trained to do and don't have the courage of your convictions to step forward. You don't have to break in anywhere. You got all the knowledge right here. Yes, you need documents to back it up. You probably got them. And if not, the knowledge the knowledge can be verified. No, it doesn't need to be put in a book so you can make a few $1 million. We need people to come out and expose what's going on in our nation right here, right now, every day. We need people to come forward and say, yep, I work for DHS, or I did work for DHS, or I work for Border Patrol, or I did, or I work for the Pentagon, or I did, or I work for NATO, or I did, or I work for the NSA, or I did, or the FBI, or the EPA, and I've got the dirt on what these people were trying to do, that they were literally working to actively subjugate the public and the people of the United States of America, that the ATF uses dirty tactics, and here's a long laundry list of them. I'm not going to even stand here and tell you I've got the documents. I'm just going to give you enough information to go out there and utilize your journalistic integrity and your skill set as an investigative reporter to go figure it all out. Of course, that would require we actually had investigative reporters in this country, which, let's be honest, they're a dying and rare breed these days. Kind of like trying to find the old booby bird, right? Or whatever that bird is that has died off, is extinct. There are a few, but the Ministry of Propaganda, listen, I don't care, but it has to be somebody who's got a national footprint, and I'll tell you why. If it's alternative media, and listen, if you want to come to me, I'll be more than happy to do it. I'm already so overexposed with these people because of what I say. Trust me, I don't think there's anything that I can expose at this point that they wouldn't look at and construe to be any worse than what I already say. But we do need somebody who's got the ability to drop the weight of the package like a Greenwald did through the Guardian. So it's got to be through, an organization that has national clout. WorldNet Daily, great organization. Go to them. Breitbart, go to them. Come to me, I'll arrange it. I don't have the national voice they do. Go to the New American. I got friends over there. I got friends in all those organizations. You see, the point is this. We are at a point where you need to stop standing around and trying to figure out which side of the fence you belong on. And I don't care whether you're a local police officer who sees corruption in your own community, in your own department. I don't care if you're a sheriff's office and you know that something dirty is going down. I don't care if you sit on the city council and you see a bid rigging deal going down. I don't care whether you are the dog catcher and you need to expose the fact that they're saying one thing and doing another. I don't care if you're a county commissioner, you're a state representative, you're a state senator. I don't care if you're a governor. I don't care if you're a guy in the military. I don't care if you're a guy in some super secret agency or not some super secret agency. I don't care if you're a guy who works for the Missouri Department of Conservation and you want to come forth and say, I know what they're trying to do, and let me expose it to the press. It's time, because here's the deal. And I have to be honest with you. There's two things that have happened in the last 6 months that have changed everything in America. Everything. The first is the exposure of the NSA projects. And the second is Obamacare. And suddenly, half of America is awake, kicking and screaming. The momentum has to grow and build. And the only way that massive change will come to this nation is through massive civil peaceful disobedience. The only way to get massive together is to expose more so that we're putting the pressure on them, not the other way around. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Fort Pierce. They got a brand new MRAP. If you don't know what an MRAP is, we'll talk about it. The problem is that they are one of many, many, many little tiny law enforcement departments around the country that are getting these assault vehicles. These are up-armored military vehicles. They stand 25 feet high. You know, they've got blast deflectors on the bottom. They're 30 tons. And these people are using them to serve warrants. Brrr. That thing's going to pull up in front of some kid's house who got caught with a nickel bag in his sock. All right, before we go, let me make sure that I thank our friends over at the battery station, batterystation.com, 417-257-7799. Our friends over at Pizza Hut, you can find them on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. Got a great lunch special and a great Tuesday evening family night where kids eat free if they're under 12. My friend Jason Henry, he's over in West Plains. He is at number 10 Court Square. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. Specializes in criminal law for both state and federal issues. And our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco, you can reach them at 417-257-1776. They're on the square in West Plains, right behind Wits End Classic Barbershop, who's also a friend and a supporter of ours. And Wits End Classic Barbershop does the best doggone haircut you're going to find in about a 100-mile radius for $10. Can't beat that with a lead pipe. And him swinging. Wait a minute, there is no him there. That joke only worked if you were watching, not if you're listening. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to talk about Fort Pierce, the police department. We're also going to talk about two other things that I want to bring to your attention. One is that there are two new products that came out of the CES thing in Consumer Electronics Show. One is FLIR radar. That is imaging, infrared imaging for your mobile phone. And then the other one is a facial recognition app that scares the snot out of me. All right, you're listening to America's Voice Now. I'd love for you to follow us on our website at americasvoicenow.org. If you'd like to advertise with us, please send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. mike@americasvoicenow.org. Please put in the subject line, advertising. I'll know exactly what to do, and I'll contact you back pronto mondo. In addition to that, please join our friends over at Patriot FB. It's a kind of a Facebook clone, but it's for Patriots only, and there's no censorship and none of that kind of nonsense there. You'll find a bunch of like-minded folks that you'll enjoy spending your time with, and you can also stream America's Voice Now live while you're there. How cool is that? You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us at americasvoicenow.org. Email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. And then you can also find us on plenty of other places. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We are in our third segment of the morning, and today is January 8th. And we're going to talk about two different topics in the last half of the show here. The first is what's going on over there in Fort Pierce and many other law enforcement departments around the country. Department of Homeland Security has been issuing these MRAPs like a dealer in Vegas shuffles and dishes out cards. It's the militarization buildup that is intended to intimidate and alarm and frighten and cower Americans into acquiescence and compliance. I don't like it, and you shouldn't either. The truth is, Fort Pierce Police Department, the chief comes out and says, if you see my SWAT team roll up in this, it's over. So just give up. What an arrogant piece of trash. What a self-aggrandizing and abusive statement. How dare he violate his oath and his obligation and his duty? He's sworn to protect and serve, not intimidate, cower, and frighten. Never mind that this thing is going to be used to serve warrants on some kid who failed to show up for court because he had a dime bag in his sock when he got pulled over for a blinker out. Never mind that they're going to use this thing to serve a warrant on a mother who failed to show up in court because she was in the doctor's office with her kid with strep throat because she missed a court date on a speeding ticket. Think I'm kidding? Go out and read about what's really going on with these MRAPs and how they're using them for warrant service. They pull up in front of your house with this thing. They got a bunch of guys who jump out in black outfits. Hood, 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 hood. They run up and crash your door over the most nonsensical, stupid crap. The militarization of local police and sheriff's offices is designed for one thing, ladies and gentlemen. It is designed to intimidate you, manipulate you, and strike fear into the citizens of this country. They're seeking to intimidate you into silence and acquiescence. It is no different than the overseer who would stand there with a whip and a shotgun. If you don't work, you'll get beat. If you run, you'll die. Mark my words. That, ladies and gentlemen, is tyranny. That, ladies and gentlemen, is thuggery. And if you want to live in a nation that is made up of a bunch of thugs ruling you, abusing you, your family, your rights, that's on you. But you can leave me out. Yesterday, there's a story about these parents who called for help with their kid. He's 18 years old. Two North Carolina parents. The local cops, well, first of all, they called because they were worried about their kid. He's schizophrenic. He's diagnosed as schizophrenic, and he suffers from depression. And so basically he had a small screwdriver, and he was running around threatening himself and others. The parents called the cops to help him deal with the situation. I can't tell you how many stories I've read like this in the last 24 months. One cop shows up from the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office, another from Boiling Springs Lakes Police Department, a third from Southport Police Department. They go into the house, they take one look at this kid, and they order the use of tasers. Which, by the way, they're awful liberal with these doggone tasers. And there's a lot of evidence out there that people are dying from them. It's just the bad combination of a taser and somebody who's got a medical condition where that taser negatively affects them. But people are dying. Anyway, they pinned this kid to the ground. They pinned him to the ground now. And I want you to think about this picture. They've got him pinned down to the ground, and one of the two cops, according to the parents now, and the parents are standing right there, and one of the two officers says to the third, "We don't have time for this." Boom! You've got to be kidding me. That's an execution. The kid, wait till you hear this. He just turned 18. He weighs 90 pounds. 90 pounds. 3 fully armed, protected, and weaponized policemen say they don't have time for this after they've already got him down on the ground, after tasing him, and they pop him. You see, I would expect that kind of behavior from a couple of thugs in the street who'd say, "Give me your money, I'll cap you." I don't expect that from men in uniform who have sworn an oath to protect and defend our nation and the people that are underneath the umbrella of their protection. The kid had no history of violence, according to his own family and all of their family friends and a bunch of other people that were interviewed. Here's what the father says. "There was no reason to shoot this kid. They killed my son in cold blood. We called for them to help, and they killed my son." The mother has suffered a mental breakdown. The New Brunswick County Sheriff's Office told the Daily Caller when they called up for an interview, "No statement. The district attorney and state investigators are looking into it." I got to tell you something, folks. Have you ever noticed when it comes to law enforcement, the police state, when it comes to these tyrants in blue murdering people, it's always an internal investigation, so the fox is guarding the hen house. They almost always come out with some solution that says, well, he followed procedure, the situation was hot, it was, it might have gotten a little out of hand, but no intentional harm was done. Yes, the kid was killed, but, hey. Officer will get a 3-week suspension with pay, and he's back on duty. I'm tired of police state tactics these are Stasi, Nazi, KGB tactics being utilized on American civilians by a group which has taken an oath and sworn to defend and protect them. I attribute this and I blame this directly back on our federal government and our state governments. They are giving these men training and the mindset and the attitude and the spirit of military engagement. Law enforcement, police work, and peace officers are not soldiers. Soldiers go in with the intent to destroy, and collateral damage is accepted. Police officers have no business with that mindset. None. I got to tell you, when I see things like this, my blood turns to steam. It turns to steam. Because when I see this, it shows me, it exposes to me. And I got to tell you, folks, this isn't like something that we see once a year. I mean, the frequency with which these things are happening make these mass shootings we see in schools and things like that look non-existent in comparison. Every single day there are stories coming out about police who are assaulting citizens, murdering them, kicking in the wrong door. A guy shows up in his hallway with a shotgun. He thinks he's under home invasion. They blow him away. Then they turn around and say, well, he shouldn't have come at us with a shotgun. No, you were in the wrong house. Number one, you should have done your homework. Number two, you shouldn't have invaded his home in black uniforms without announcing yourselves. And I don't even care if you did announce yourselves. You got no business doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have fallen to tyranny. A free people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence and self-defense from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. George Washington, not Michael. The time has come for Americans to recognize that we have lost control of our local, our state, our federal law enforcement agencies. All of them. All of them. There's not a single one that is treating this nation appropriately. We are now living under a state of siege. Siege by our own government, by our own law enforcement agencies, by our own departments, by the people who live in your town. The same officers whose children go to school with your children. The same sheriffs and deputies who go to churches in your communities. Ladies and gentlemen, how long will we allow this to go on? How long will we let this go on? We are under siege. We are under an exigent threat from our very own police departments. These aren't some foreign groups. These aren't some vague groups that are foreign terrorists. These are terrorists in our midst. They're our neighbors. Alexander Solzhenitsyn lived in the gulags of Russia for years, decades. Political prisoner. He says, and how we burned in the camps later, thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family that night? Or if during periods of mass arrest, as for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their lairs, paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase. But they had understood they had nothing left to lose and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. The organs of terror would very quickly have suffered a shortage of officers and transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's bloodthirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt. If. But we didn't love freedom enough. And even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. We purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterward. Ladies and gentlemen, I would submit to you that what we're seeing now is not far off from Alexander's experiences. Maybe it's not on a grand scale where they're arresting a quarter of the city. But there is absolutely no denying that our own government is building up a stunning amount of arms, materiel, and training in order to subjugate your community, your town, your city, your village, your burg. They got in Fort Pierce, Florida, they got this vehicle. It's a $700,000 vehicle. It's what it cost our government. They sold it to them through under the National Defense Authorization Act. Yeah, that same traitorous document that allows them to hold Americans under indefinite detention. So go and draw the lines together, ladies and gentlemen. Connect the dots for yourself. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 authorizes the indefinite detention of Americans for a belligerent act, quote unquote. Define belligerent, you can't because they won't. And then you're barred from ever having access to an attorney to even go to court to determine what does belligerent constitute. Was that your failure to show up for the traffic ticket? Was it your son who was 19 years old and got caught with a nickel bag in his sock? Will you stand up then? This, ladies and gentlemen, is treason. 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 Capital bold. Exclamation point. Treason. I don't care if you want to try to give me a legal definition of it. I'm telling you what this is. When you are assaulting, murdering, wounding, maiming your own citizens because you are drunk with power, that is treason. For the record, Fort Pierce, this is their second one. I don't know what the population is of Fort Pierce, Florida, but I can tell you this. They don't need one of these, much less two. I don't know the population of Columbia, Missouri, but they just got one. I don't know the student population of Ohio State University, but they just got one. For police presence at football games, was their half-baked, half-ridiculous excuse. No, that's not police presence. That's called intimidation. Big difference. Police presence is a bunch of guys standing around in uniform. Intimidation is a bunch of guys standing around in uniform backed up by a tank. I am reaching a point where it has become abundantly clear to anyone who is willing to even remotely recognize We as citizens had better prepare to defend ourselves against local, regional, state, and federal troops. And mark my words, these police departments are now troops. They are not police officers. They are not peace officers. They are troops which have been injected into your communities. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate mail from cops who say, we're not doing that. And if you're not, guess what? I'm not even going to applaud you because you're not supposed to do that. I expect that of you. It's like showing up on time for work. You don't get any extra kudos for being on time and punching the clock. What you get kudos for is a job well done. And if you're not doing your job under constitutional rules and regulations that you self-govern, then you don't belong in that job. And I don't give a darn who you are, how big you are, how fast you shoot, or what authority you claim. I don't care. And frankly, neither does the rest of the nation. And this is a message to all law enforcement. You'd better get your act collectively together and stop this tyranny and this tirade of abuse against American citizens. Or Alexander Solzhenitsyn's suggestions will start to work their way into the public mind. Wrong is wrong is wrong. And you don't need to be a constitutional scholar. You need not even have read the document to know that if you work for law enforcement and you are acting in this manner, that you are wrong. And that you are a danger, a clear and present exigent danger to our society. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. These are harsh words. But I got to tell you something. If you're in law enforcement, these are harsh times. And if what you're doing even comes remotely close to what these groups are doing, with some of these stories I've exposed, we got nothing further to talk about. Next time you're going to write a ticket, determine, is this really necessary? Or am I just meeting a quota? It starts there. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Email me with your comments and your ideas and your opinions, good or bad. You can send them to me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment below. I try to answer them, not all of them, but I try. We'll be right back. All right. Man, I hate when I got to get mad like that. That kind of behavior is so egregious, so disgusting, so despicable, so murderous. How can one sit and not get angry? How can one sit and not be fazed by that? Not have their blood turn to steam? Okay. Hooey. Thank our friends over at the Battery Station. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. Friends over at Pizza Hut, Porter Wagoner Boulevard, West Plains. Tuesday evenings, family night, children eat free. Great lunch specials. Do yourself a favor, get there. I think it runs from like 11 o'clock till like 2 in the afternoon. Jason Henry over at Jason Henry Law Offices, 417-256-4100. Specializes in criminal cases, including police abuse and military tactics used on civilians by alleged law enforcement, including federal cases. Friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco, right on the square in West Plains. They do exactly what their name says, Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. I rest my case. It doesn't need anything more said. And Wits End Classic Barbershop. I'm going over there right after this show to get my hair cut because there's steam stuck in my hair from this last segment. I got to get it out. All right. In this segment, I'm going to talk about the PACT. And this is a policy which I came up with after a lot of thought, and basically here's what it says. The PACT is an acronym for Political Accountability Contract and Trust. The Political Accountability Contract and Trust. Essentially, it's a methodology that can be used in concert with massive peaceful civil disobedience in a grassroots level movement. And here's what the PACT does. Basically, it says, if you're a candidate, you have appointed to you 11, and it doesn't have to be 11, it could be 7. It's got to be an odd number. 9, accountability partners. And I'm open to your feedback and your ideas on this if you'd like. Just give me a minute or two to get it out there, and then if you want to call, you can call us at 417-204-5141 to give me your feedback on it live. If not, you can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Essentially, here's how it works. The candidates have 11 accountability partners, and in this contract with their accountability partners and their constituencies, they sign an agreement. And the agreement is a contract, and it states that there are a series of specifications in there, including voluntary term limits. If it's a federal level, 2 House term limits, 1 Senate. And then no flip-flop, right? In other words, the object here is to eliminate careerists. You're going to do your 2 terms in the House, and then you're going to go home after your 4 years of civic duty, and you're going to go back to being whatever it was you were, a shopkeeper, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. I don't care whether you're a shoe salesman. That's what you do. You do your duty, and then you go back. 1 term in the Senate. No acceptance of lobbying money. And I can tell you why, because if you're not going to run again, you don't need lobby money loaded into your re-election campaign, do you? No voting on any bill you haven't read. No voting on any bill you haven't read and cannot draw a constitutional thread back to. But here's what really matters. The teeth of the PACT is that you are pre-signing as a candidate a resignation letter that is held in trust by your accountability partners. And if and when you violate your contract with your constituents and your accountability partners will do exactly what their namesake says. They will hold you accountable. They will submit your letter of resignation, which was pre-executed before you began your candidacy and your campaign run, and then they will give you 48 hours notice that you better prepare because the press is going to be coming to your door saying, explain to us why you resigned. Now, I've heard of a lot of different programs out there, Contract with America, you had Norquist out there with the anti-tax pledges and all those kinds of things. But not a single one of them ever has teeth. They're just threats of, well, if you violate, then we'll remove you from office at the first available election. Well, guess what? If that's a senator, folks, and he violates the agreement in year 1, you got to wait 5 more years of his abuse before you can do something about it. I'm saying the PACT eliminates you day 1. The accountability partners simply date the fully executed letter of resignation as, quote, liquidated damages. Now, let me tell you why this works and what matters about it. If you are a person who's trying to run against an incumbent, here's what matters. They have name recognition and they've got a lot of party money. The goal of the PACT actually does two things. Well, it has two intended consequences. Not unintended, but intended consequences. And I'll tell you what they are. The first is that it breaks the back of the power of lobbyists. Why do I say that? Well, because if the lobbyist can't go to you and promise to put money in your campaign, your re-election campaign, then, and you're signing a pledge that you're not going to accept any lobbying money anyway, to a PAC or a re-election campaign or any other third party. So there's no Swiss bank accounts and there's no money in a Cayman's account either. Then effectively, the lobbying part, they can lobby you, they just can't pay you. They can't bribe you. They can lobby you. They can go to your office and say, listen, we think, we represent the Lollipop Guild, and we want you to pass this piece of legislation because it's going to benefit our members of the Lollipop Guild. That's fine. But when it comes with a check, that's not. So the PACT will break the back of lobbying within a relatively short generation of electoral cycles. Won't take long. The second advantage is that it will break the back of the duopoly parties. If you're a Republican, tough. If you're a Democrat, I don't care. The truth of the matter is the duopoly party system has been the downfall of America and the United States for the last 150 years. You don't represent us. You represent your party's interests. And ladies and gentlemen, that ain't us. How does it break the back of the party? I'm going to tell you how. If you're not running for re-election, the party can't throw money at you. Number one. Number two, you are committing in advance that you are not going to vote along party lines, to go along and get along. Number two, you've got term limits. Those term limits say that you're not going to run again. And that you're also committing that this is not a careerist move. It also states very emphatically that not only will you not run again, but you're not going to take that influence and go work for a lobbyist. The idea is to break the back of parties. I don't have a problem with parties. I only have a problem with party platforms that say, if you're going to be a member of this party, you're going to do what we tell you to do. Because that means that you're doing what you're representing them, not representing me. It's as simple as that. And the party's interests are not my interests. The party's interests are not my family's interests. The party's interests are not my business's interests. They may claim that we are parallel, but I can assure you that we're not. And the truth of the matter is, if we were, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now, would we? So the premise of the PACT is to, and the intended consequences of the PACT are to break the power of lobbyists, break the power of the duopoly party system, and, even more importantly, implement that which we all know is necessary, but we can't get it through a Congress who's against voting against their own personal best interest. Things like term limits, things like a balanced budget amendment. The other advantage that a PACT signatory gets is that they have an opportunity to then stand up in front of the incumbent, and they get a chance to go to the pulpit or the dais and announce their candidacy and say, "Now look, I'm running against senator or congressman or mayor or lieutenant governor, or I'm running against state representative or city council member XYZ. And I've signed a pact here, which you may, by all intents and purposes, you can download off of my website, or I'll give you a copy of it right here. And my accountability partners, who are named here, are available. And I've pre-signed a resignation letter, which they have in their possession. And if and when I violate your trust, like the candidate there who I'm running against, if I violate your trust like this candidate, then you don't have to try to recall me. You don't have to try to vote me out after waiting X number of years to get me out of the job. Meanwhile, I'm doing damage to our country. All you've got to do is let my accountability partners do their job. They'll take care that I'm ousted. Now, the candidate I'm running against, candidate XYZ, has not signed the accountability and the political accountability contract and trust, or PACT. I, as a no name, am running against this incumbent, and I have signed the PACT, and they cannot. And here's why they can't: because they've already capitulated to special interests, they've already taken lobbyist money, they have already done all of the things that my agreement says I won't do, and therefore they cannot legally, ethically, morally, or any other way sign an agreement which would violate the allegiances which they've already been paid to adhere to by their managers, handlers, and bosses. I'm telling you, I'm going into this with the right idea. And I'm telling you right now that I will not do what this incumbent, who has been doing for the last 6, 12, 24, 38, 52 years. You see, the real problem here, folks, is that we have candidates who get into office and they go in there, boy, and they go in there prepared for battle. They gird their loins like we tell them in the Bible, and they stroll into that position, and they go in there ready to take on the world and fight. And then what happens? Well, the party gets a hold of them, and they sit them down and say, now look, this is how it really works. And if you want to sit on this committee, you're going to do this, and you're going to raise money for us. In fact, if you want to sit on this committee, you got to raise $25,000 a month. If you want to sit on that committee, you got to raise $1.2 million a year. And if you don't vote for our stuff, we're not going to vote for your stuff. Well, guess what, folks? It's time for us to break the back of that. Because that doesn't help us. That only helps them. And them is a small oligarchy of power that is dead set upon improving their own situation, their own circumstance, at our expense. Now, it won't take more than a couple of legislative sessions or electoral, I want to use the word generations, to put the PACT in place. First of all, I would encourage everyone to use it in this election scenario. Right now, we've got an election coming up in 2014. What a perfect way to open up the PACT and introduce it to America. The PACT: political accountability, contract, and trust. Why? Because you have entrusted this resignation letter, and you have put it in the hands of your accountability partners, who will hold it in trust, but only as long as you have administered and you have done the sworn oath and duty and followed the principles under which you originally got into that job. It eliminates corruption. See, the principle here, guys, is that we can look. Who was it? Jefferson that said, "Let's forget about men who want to tout their ethics. Let's bind them down with the chains of a constitution." And I say, well, because they ignore that, let's bind them down with something better called the PACT. And as liquidated damages, we can even throw a clause in there that says, I agree, I will not take this to court. My liquidated damages is my resignation letter. I'm I'm agreeing in advance. I'm of sound mind and body. I'm X number of years old. My name is Joe Schmo. Jane Doe. And I entered into this agreement willingly, knowing the implications, knowing the outcome of my behavior will determine whether or not that resignation letter is ever submitted, or if my candidacy ends and I am, for all intents and purposes, honorably discharged. Now, I'd like to see this done in concert with, you've all heard about, and you've heard me talk about it before, General Paul Vallely and Colonel Harry Riley have been talking about this American Spring in April, where they want to send people to Washington, D.C. to basically camp out, following the plan I outlined on America's Voice Now back in April of 2011. This is going back a couple of years, guys. I put this thing up there. In fact, I put it up earlier, but I modified it because of the date. But the idea was basically to go on and place all state and federal capitals under civil disobedience, peaceful siege. Now, Colonel Harry Riley's got a plan up on his website that talks about it. Unarmed, peaceful, 10 million people to march on Washington. I'd like to modify that and have it done on state capitals as well. But here's what I'd like to see done in concert with that, because just going up there, and according to Colonel Riley's plan, the Speaker of the House and all of the heads of both the minority and majority partners in the House and Senate would be booted out, and they would reappoint a new president to act in a short-term manner and all that. Here's the problem with that. You're still leaving the rest of the rats in the ship. And I say, I would rather see the Tea Party, the Constitution, the Libertarian Party, and others who are interested in true freedom and liberty and the restoration of constitutional principles to create a committee that will find, qualify, and vet candidates prior to April. And to replace all of the sitting legislators, all of them, every single one, to the last man and woman in the House and Senate. And the entire executive, including all the cabinet members, and the judiciary, including the 9 Supreme Court justices. Why? Because it is our right, it is our duty to throw off the chains of oppression and tyranny and to seek that new government which is in our best interests and will best protect us. Go look at the Declaration of Independence, ladies and gentlemen. They're not my words. I paraphrased, but they're not mine. Then find candidates from each district. So you find 2 senators from the state of Maine and 2 from the state of New York and Colorado and North Carolina and Florida and Miami, Texas, and so forth and so on. You need, 435 representatives from the states to step up and say, I will be the representative for this district. I'm willing to be vetted and qualified. I'm willing to have my background looked into so that it turns out I'm not some sneaking, pervasive monster like we're trying to remove. Essentially a replication of our entire government. Pre-qualified, and all of them signatories and members of the PACT. And agreeing in advance that they are going to serve one single term and one only, with a couple of exceptions, because the Senate has to be staggered and so forth and so on. So some of the senators would only serve a third, some would serve 2/3, and some would serve the full term. And reinstitute constitutional elections. No more electronics, no more nonsense, no more iPad, cell phone voting. No. Americans count the votes. No more French companies counting the votes. I've had enough of that stuff. It isn't who votes, it's who counts the votes. That's what really matters. And these people who are pre-qualified, pre-vetted, if you will, who answer a call that can be a national ad campaign seeking candidates for the new constitutional republic of the United States of America. Newspapers, cable stations, television programs, radio shows, social media, internet websites. Put those ads everywhere. A national ad campaign. You want to draw people out of the woodwork, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it. Yeah, you're going to get some kooks and you're going to get some nutballs, but that's the purpose of qualifying and vetting them. And then when they sign the PACT, we have a way to hold them accountable. The political accountability, contract, and trust. I'm wide open to your ideas on this thing. I'm not saying I'm some oracle or seer who's got all of it planned out and figured out. I've got the basics of it. I've got most of it designed. See, the alternative, folks, is that what we do is we have a government that's a group of people that go up and say, everybody out, and they have no plan for how to replace anything. What we'll end up with is something similar or akin to Egypt, where the military steps in, and now you've lost control to a junta. And frankly, with the Pentagon right now, I wouldn't trust any of those people in the Pentagon to take control of our government. They'd never give it back. So the Egyptians made a big mistake. We can't afford to make the same one. They didn't have a stand-in government waiting in the back wings. And they should have, because government abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. And a vacuum in power will never work in our favor. All right. I'd like your feedback on this. I'd like to see your emails on this concept. If you want to work with me on it, send me an email. Subject line, The PACT. P-A-C-T, The PACT. I want to hear from you. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Are you willing to help me? Are you willing to support me? Are you a member of a Tea Party and you can help me further this concept? Are you a member of a political party? By the way, the PACT is not going to be signed by your Republicans and your Democrats, folks. They're not going to do it because they can't. And it won't be signed by any incumbents because they can't. They've already traded off the birthright for the Esau bowl of soup, folks. Your birthright. They can't go back and change the rules now. What do you think? The guy goes back to the mob boss after and says, hey, I changed the rules. And the mob boss says, no, you didn't. Pow. So, I want to hear from you. Mike at americasvoicenow.org. That's Mike at americasvoicenow.org. Please write this down. Communicate with me. Give me your feedback. Tell me it's a good idea, bad idea. You've got a better solution. You've got another way. You've got a great idea on how to pick the accountability partners. I don't care what it is, but let me hear your feedback. Make it clear and concise and well-reasoned. Do not send me a link to somebody else's YouTube video and say, watch this, it'll explain everything. That tells me you're not a critical thinker and you're not really willing to help me. You just want to inject me with your bad idea. No, thank you. I want originality. Are you in or are you out? You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host here. I want to push this PACT thing, and I want to do it now because 2014 is the year for elections. This is our last hurrah at trying to save this government in some semblance of restorative fashion without violence, without a massive upheaval that will drag the entire world into a black hole. This is our chance, folks. Let's use our creativity and think outside the box. Mike at americasvoicenow.org or just americasvoicenow.org. We'll see you tomorrow morning.